Okay, let's go back to the beginning real quick with fractions. First off, whenever you're looking at fractions, the bottom number is always called the denominator, and the top number is always called the numerator. So just remember, if you see these types of terminologies thrown at you in different worksheets and tests, bottom number is denominator, top number is the numerator. When you see a situation where the numerator is actually bigger than the denominator, then we call this an improper fraction. Okay. They have their purposes, and in fact, we're going to be using it when we take a look at this situation. That's a mixture of a whole number with a fraction. Normally, it's a regular fraction. It's not improper, but it's the mixture of a whole number and the fraction. You notice I just said mixture. That's because we're actually going to call it a mixed number. Okay. Now, going forward, how do we actually add and subtract? Let's go back to the basics here. Let's just say that we have 1/4 plus 2/4. As long as we have the same denominators, again, that's the bottom number. As long as both fractions have the same thing, then we can actually just add the top numbers. So I'm actually going to rewrite this and actually slide the 4 right here, just right over here. And 1 plus 2 is 3, so 1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4. 7/8 minus 6/8, again, they have the same denominator, so it's the basic idea of 7 minus 6 is 1, and so we keep the same denominator. If this is all that fractions were, then we would be very happy. Nobody would be panicking over fractions. But then we come into different situations where the denominators do not match up. So let's take a look at how we do that. In this situation, we've got two fractions that do not have the same denominator. So what can we do? We can use multiplication to change the bottom number into the same number as the other fraction. So 2 times 4 would get us 8, and that would make them match, okay? But if you multiply the bottom of a fraction by a number, you have to multiply the top by the same number. So since I use this positive 2 here, I have to use this positive 2 up at the top. 2 times 1 is 2. And now it's the same thing that you're used to seeing. Once you get used to it, it's not a big deal. Until you get used to it, it can be a little bit intimidating. If you have bad memories of this in grade school, you're older now, hopefully you can actually work your way through this crisis, okay? If not, come see me for help. I'm always here for you. Now, what about if we have the situation where both denominators don't match up? And by that I mean I can't change the 3 into a 4 very easily, and I can't change the 4 into a 3. So what can we do? Here's my basic step. Take the two denominators that are different and multiply them together, and you would actually get 12. So let's just go ahead and quickly make both of them 12. 4 times 3 would get me 12. 3 times 4 would get me 12. And so here we go. This is what we're multiplying both of them by. Just remember to do this to the top number of the fraction, which is called the numerator. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. And whoops, did you see my mistake right there? I got in a hurry. If I multiply the bottom number by 3, I need to multiply the top number by 3. So 3 times 3 is actually 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. So just let that be a reminder. Don't be in too big of a hurry here. It's basically, now that we have the same denominator, just 4 plus 9, and that will equal 13 over 12. Here's my issue though. This is a what again? Hopefully you're remembering it's called an improper fraction. I do not want that for your final answer. Change it into a mixed number. You take the top number and you divide it by the bottom number, the numerator divided by the denominator. 12 goes into 13 once. I have 1 left over. So this one, the 12 going in once, becomes your whole number. This number right here, your leftover, becomes your new numerator, and we just still the same denominator. So 13/12 becomes 1 and 1/12. All right, let's take a look at the new stuff, because this is all old information. The new stuff has to deal with the negative fractions. We would call this fraction 7/8. If I put a negative sign in there, and let's just say it's right there with the same level of the fraction bar, we would then call it negative 7/8. I would like you to rewrite those anytime you see them in your book or your worksheets as -7 on the top and a +8 on the bottom. Guess what? We still call this one negative 7/8, even though the negative sign has gone up. Technically, you can also still do this. Also, you can move the negative sign down. It doesn't really matter where this negative sign is at. If it's at the same level of the fraction bar, up there with the numerator, or down here with the denominator, we would still pronounce it as negative 7/8. Focus on using this one. It's the way most math teachers are set up and using it, and it prevents a little bit of headaches later on in algebra. So let's move on to what we do when we see this type of situation. So let's look at negative 7/6 plus 6/6. Um, it's an improper fraction. This would actually be 1, but we're just using this as a teaching example. Our denominators match up. So on the top, it's -7 plus 6. What is -7 plus 6? Well, 7 minus 6 is 1, and -7 has the greater absolute value, so we would call it 1/6 um, negative because it was furthest from 0, okay? Um, let's do another one real quick. How about -3/4 plus -2/3? In the same manner that we had to do last time, let's see, 4 times 3 is 12. We need to get our denominators to be 12. So this one we're going to need to multiply by 4. So we multiply the top by 4. This one, to change the 4 into 12, is by 3. And this is what we would get. Remember, that's 3 times -3, so it's -9. And 3 times 4 is 12. Over here, 4 times -2 is -8. And 3 times 4 is 12. And that sets up this situation. We're going to be adding the -9 to the -8. I'll put that -8 in parentheses there just to help you see it's negative. And since they have the same signs, we just add them and keep the sign in front of it the same. There we go. How many times does 12 go into 17? Well, it goes in 1 time. And since it's a negative, we'll say it's -1. How much is left over? 5. So this 5 is going to be our new numerator, and we keep the same denominator. What about if we subtract? Well, let's just do this one. -8/3. I know it's an improper fraction. Let's just go with it. Minus -2/3. So this is assuming that you've got the denominators the same. If they're different, you can go through and change it, but the very first step that you always do with subtraction is keep, change, change. So keep your sign of the first number, change subtraction, change the sign of your second number. And then if you need to, you go through and you change your denominators. In this case, they're the same. So now it's -8 plus +2. So the numerator is -8 plus 2, and the denominator to be +3. Um, we have mixed signs, and we're adding, so it's 8 minus 2 is 6. Which one has the greatest absolute value? It's negative, so this would need to be a negative, -6/3. And in this case, I wanted to show this example. 6 is divided by 3, or how many times does 3 fit into 6? It goes in 2 times with nothing left over. Since it has a negative sign right here, we'll call it -2. Nothing's left over. You don't even worry about putting the fraction up there. I think this should give you more than enough to get started with the homework problems. Just come and talk to me anytime you have any issues.